What's up, guys? So today in this video I want to talk about some things to keep in mind when writing cliffhangers within your books. Now, I'm not saying this is an end-all video, saying this is the only way to do it. If you don't do it this way, your cliffhanger is going to be crap. That's not at all what this is. These are just some of my personal observations and opinions and some points I've collected about writing cliffhangers. Now, the first thing you want to keep in mind when writing cliffhangers is frequency. Don't put too many of them in your book. Now, I've read books that have anywhere between 30 and 50% of the chapters in cliffhangers. Now, let me just say that is way too many. It's absolutely unnecessary. The point of a cliffhanger is to leave the reader with a question on how the situation is going to be resolved. Therefore, they want to keep reading and go into the next chapter to get that answer. And sometimes the answer may not come for a couple of chapters, but you get the point. However, when you have multiple cliffhangers, or they're not just multiple, really depends on how many chapters within your book and where they fit. So the exact amount you can or shouldn't have really varies from book to book. But when you start having too many, personally, I found that I stopped caring about the cliffhanger being resolved, because I knew as soon as I got the cliffhanger resolved, I was going to get another cliffhanger and another one and another one. And cliffhangers usually rely on the reader's emotional investment in the story. And so when you are essentially, I guess, for lack of a better term, playing with their emotions, when you're just taking advantage of that far too often, it actually becomes annoying to read. And again, has the opposite effect, because I just stopped caring. When it comes to cliffhangers, another annoyance I have is cliffhangers that get resolved too quickly. A cliffhanger creates suspense to keep the reader reading on. However, when that suspense and that cliffhanger gets resolved within the first 2 or 3 pages of the following chapter, it's wasted suspense. There's so much more that suspense could have been used to fulfill or been built on to create something that keeps the reader reading beyond the first 2 or 3 pages of the following chapter. So let's say you've written a cliffhanger and it's done its job. It's created a sense of suspense and made the reader want to read into the next chapter. Now, it's your job as a writer to provide that reader with a satisfying answer to that cliffhanger. And obviously, really short answers that are wrapped up really quickly within 2 or 3 pages of the following chapter just don't give that feeling. In fact, I feel like they're put in the story just to make the reader continue reading your book. And that may be the case, but it shouldn't feel that way. Finally, my last pet peeve, and albeit it's a little bit of a small one and probably just being nitpicky, but I don't like it when every single cliffhanger always comes out with a positive result. I'd like to see occasional cliffhangers happen and then there isn't a resolution, or at least not a positive resolution for our protagonists. I'm not saying that all cliffhangers need to have a bad ending or not turn out, but it's nice to see an occasional one not turn out in favor of the characters, because that leaves me wondering not just how the cliffhanger will be resolved, but whether or not it will be resolved. And then you can build on that so much more with your characters, so that you don't just have half a chapter, or 2 chapters resolving the cliffhanger, but rather you maybe have 10 pages resolving the cliffhanger, and then you have the next couple of chapters builds on the suspense of getting out and rectifying the situation that the unresolved cliffhanger created. It just adds a huge opportunity to build upon and keep your readers interested beyond just the resolution of that cliffhanger. So I know this has been a real short video, but as a recap here, don't use too many cliffhangers. Using too many cliffhangers often has the opposite of the intended effect. It makes the reader get annoyed and not want to continue with the story because they simply don't care anymore. Also, don't resolve cliffhangers too quickly. You've created that suspense, you've created that cliffhanger, make use of it. Make the resolution or the act of resolving that cliffhanger last for several pages. I'm not saying it needs to last an entire chapter, or definitely not even an entire book, but maybe 5-6 pages, depending on how long your chapters are. Also, don't always have cliffhangers end on a positive note. Maybe certain cliffhangers get resolved, but it's in a negative manner. Maybe one of your characters is wounded at the end of a chapter, and that is the cliffhanger. Well, maybe instead of having the character heal or something from it, or recover from it, maybe they live, but they lose that leg, or something like that. Depending on what your story allows and what would work within the story, definitely creates a lot more suspense, a lot more drama, and can really pull on the emotions of the reader much more to get the reader to invest themselves in the story and want to continue reading beyond just the resolution of that cliffhanger. Anyway, there's just some opinions I have on cliffhangers, things I've come across when reading, some certain pet peeves and annoyances of mine. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching.